right, welcome to our quick lecture about operational definitions, what they are and how to write them. My name is Chris Gall and I'll be your host for the day. So the purpose of an operational definition in psychology is to really explain how we're going to define our key terms, right? Because behavior can be tricky to define sometimes. It can be hard to tell, what counts as a smile. That's a type of behavior, right? What doesn't count? And emotions are tricky to define all the time because they are largely self-defined. Okay, so happy to me might not be the same as happy to you. Psychology is a science, and in science, experiments need to be replicable. That means that other people have to be able to do your experiment and get the same data. And if they can't do that, then your experiment isn't replicable. Right? So creating a clear definition for what counts as a given behavior or emotion that you're trying to measure in your experiment is what we need to do. Okay, that's just part of being a good psychologist. Okay, and that clear definition needs to be something that literally anybody could use, right? Including someone like, say, my 9-year-old son. Okay, he should be able to tell what you mean by your key terms in your operational definition. Okay, and you need operational definitions if we've got things that people might define differently. So behaviors or emotions that get defined differently. Okay. And then operational definitions are those procedures by which you define the variable. What counts, what doesn't. Okay. So what counts and what doesn't. And that's really what we're trying to get at with that operational definition. Okay. So the parts of an operational definition, you have to explain what is it that you are defining. Okay. So if I'm trying to, measure how happy somebody is after an experiment, I have to identify the fact that what I'm trying to define is happiness. Okay. And then what counts for happy specifically? So is it just that I'm giving a survey and people write down that they feel better, right? If that's what you're doing, that's specific and it counts. But you gotta be specific. And you have to explain how you're gonna measure that thing that counts. So the example I just gave, right, where you're giving a survey, you would say, on a survey after the experience, people will state that they are happier, or people will identify themselves as feeling happier than they did before. So that's really what you need within an operational definition. Okay. They're pretty straightforward in terms of that kind of a definition, but they're much harder for students to write a lot of times. And that's why you got to be careful when you're going through and doing this. So let's work, first of all, with some examples of operational definitions, right? So you can tell someone's smiling because the edges of their lips are turned up and their eyes are crinkled. How do I know that they're smiling? Because they meet those two criteria. When I'm looking at them, the edges of their lips are turned up, their eyes are crinkled, right? So the smile goes up to their eyes, basically, right? You can tell someone is happy if they self-identify as 7 or higher on a 1 to 10 point scale, asking how happy they are today. How do I know that they are happy? Because they self-identify as 7 or higher. Okay, so they're doing the identifying and I've got a clear cut point. Somebody says 6, they don't count as happy. Okay, that person at 6 is happy adjacent. If they say 7, they're happy. It's a very clear-cut definition, and I can tell exactly how I'm measuring it. And anybody else could use that same definition to determine if people are happy. Okay. Someone is suffering from sugar-induced hyperactivity if after eating 3 or more candy bars, they get up 6 or more times and move around in a 60-minute period. How do I know that it's sugar-induced? They ate 3 or more candy bars. So if they only eat 2, it doesn't count as sugar-induced. Okay. How do I know that they're being hyperactive? They get up 6 or more times in a 60-minute period. and move around the room. Okay. It's very clear. If they get up 5 times, they don't count as hyperactive. If they only eat 2 candy bars, it's not sugar induced. So if they eat 2 candy bars and get up 10 times, they might be hyperactive, but it's not sugar induced, right? If they eat 5 candy bars and only get up 3 times, they're not hyperactive. Okay, so it's very, very clear. How do I know that they're meeting the different parts to define this? Anybody could do that. It's very clear how we're counting or how we're not counting. Okay, some non-examples. I know someone is happy because they are smiling, right? People define smiling in different ways. Be specific about what counts, right? Is it smiling if my lips are turned up? Is it smiling if my eyes look happy? Okay. And the reason why is, for example, I can snarl at somebody and have my lips turned up. So am I really happy if that's what's going on, right? I can close my eyes or close them really tight. Does that count as happy? Maybe, maybe not, right? But be specific. So in this case, it's too general. It's too general. 6 different people are going to define smiling 6 different ways, right? You don't know what smiling means in that case, right? Football is the best sport because it is fun. So people define fun in different ways, right? You got to define what you mean by that term fun, right? A much better version of this would be football can be considered to be fun if in opinion polls, 80% of people give it a score of 7 out of 10 or higher, 7 or higher, in fun to play. So now I know what it means for football to be fun. Some people have to give it 7 out of 10, and in my poll, it's got to be at least 80% of people, right? So if 75% of people say it's 7 out of 10, football's not fun. If, people give it a 6 out of 10, 70% of people give it a 6 out of 10, 90% of people give it a 6 out of 10, it's not fun. It's a very clear definition. I can tell what I mean by fun, right? And best is always going to be an opinion as well, right? So we wouldn't use a term like best in an operational definition, but for sure we can do something like fun because that's easy to define in some way, right? Psychology students get the highest grades because they have good study habits. Okay. Highest grades, that's pretty easy to parse. We can tell what counts for highest grades, right? That's just a basic class order. High schools do that all the time. Okay. But what can be defined as having, but could be better defined as having maybe the highest grade point averages, right? Because that's grade point averages take letter grades and turn them into numbers, and numbers can be compared. But what counts as a good study habit? What counts as a good study habit? Is it if you review all of your classes every day? Is it that you have the most notes? Is it that you score the highest on tests, or you participate the most during class? What counts as a good study habit? You got to be specific. Got to be specific. Okay, that's the way operational definitions work. This is definitely one where the devil's going to be in the details. Okay, so just to review, good operational definitions are measurable. In other words, it's easy to figure out what counts and what doesn't. All right? Good operational definitions are clear. Your ambiguous terms are clearly defined so that others can count them in the same way that you did. And then good operational definitions can be used by anyone who wants to replicate your experiment to hopefully get the same results, right? That's the whole point of replication, is to see if you get the same results or not. And the only way we can do that is if we have a good operational definition. And operational definitions are the procedure by which you define the variable. In other words, how do you determine what counts and what doesn't? that is our quick review of operational definitions. If you've got questions, please feel free to reach out and contact me during class, or if you're in my AP Psych class via Canvas or Remind, and I will see you next time.